Hi everybody, welcome to C-Suite Strategy, Elevate Every Move, Scale Beyond. Our topic of discussion today, can strategy storytelling really transform boardroom influence? Your go-to podcast on tech, cyberspace, strategy and growth. I am your host Prem Kumar AS today and we'll explore how to transform boardroom influence. A special welcome to all tuned into Power of Knowing Forum's weekly podcast series 295 live on LinkedIn. To have this topic discussed, we have the honor of Dr. Amit Nagpal, PhD, to aspiring independent directors, C-suite, strategic storytelling, personal branding, and boardroom presence. Without further ado, let's welcome our esteemed speaker to the podcast event and dive into the topic. Hi, sir. Welcome to our podcast, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Prem Kumar.
How are you, sir?
I'm fine and look forward to the interactions.
Sir, a small intro about yourself to the audience, sir.
Yes, sure. Uh, Almost completing 3 decades of experience after my MBA in marketing. I have worked in the corporates for a few years, different sides of media actually. I worked in television, even book publishing for some time, print media, digital, of course, I have completed along, so my PhD was also in media marketing. And 2011, I started as a coach, personal branding and storytelling coach to C-suite and senior executives. Uh, Past 3 years, I have been working with aspiring independent directors.
Thank you for that intro, sir. To start with the first point that I wanted to have your inputs is executives fear their hard data is ignored. How can storytelling make those numbers matter at the board level, sir?
Yes. So let me set the context with a very interesting story and how data and story together they create that magic and that power. I always keep repeating that people trust the data and people remember the story. Now they trust the data, but they don't remember the data. They remember the story, but they may not trust the story. So it's a combination of data and story, which actually is like maybe the Brahmastra or a very powerful, tool. I remember I was attending this HR Tech, People Matters HR Tech conference long back in Gurugram. And there was a very senior speaker from Amazon, and he shared this story that they did a survey in Amazon, and one of the questions in the survey was, does your boss shout at you? Now this was a very interesting question, and in a particular department, in some there were some responses, that yes, the boss shouts. Now the management was worried, why is the boss shouting at the subordinates? And this story is a very good example of how data can be incomplete without the story or without the anecdote or narrative. So then the company did further research, and so what's wrong? Why is the boss shouting? And what came out was that this shouting was happening in the dispatch department because there were so many courier boys and there was so much noise in the room. So the boss had no option, but he had to shout to make himself heard. Now, this was an example, shared by this top executive from Amazon. So data can be sometimes incomplete without the story.
Valid point, sir, because we don't know the context why somebody is shouting, and
Right.
we don't know what exactly is the exact story which is going on, and
Right.
the challenges that are there which they are facing. So some data dies without a story, right?
Yes.
Okay. Coming to the next point now, with AI completely complexity rising, leaders fear losing influence. How does storytelling simplify tech for decision making?
So I would say, as long as humans rule the world, maybe we have had some fiction films where robots take over. Then
Yeah,
maybe robots may not bother about story. So
right.
human brain is wired for story.
Hmm.
We have a gene called FOXP2, which is a storytelling gene, which is the only human beings are the only species, which has this gene.
Okay.
So, stories provide context, and stories, give that meaning to that data.
Okay. So your pointer says that every pointer that is going to be discussed or that is mentioned has a story to it, and with that story, the whole narrative changes. Am I right in saying that, sir?
Yes, I would like to add one more point
Yes.
because there is a lot of discussion going on about different kind of biases in the
Hmm.
data generated by ChatGPT or other AI tools.
Okay.
Now, AI in that sense is like a mirror.
Hmm.
Okay. If the data is defective, the data is biased, then the reflection will be broken.
Okay.
So, the what data we will feed into the AI will create the kind of results, based on the data.
True. Now, again, what you rightly said is artificial intelligence is, we are saying it is artificial before we even conclude, right? And the
Right.
way we are talking about is what data that is getting feeded is what the output would be, and how much of data is correct is what you will get the kind of output that is required or which is going to
Yes.
come out. So
Yes.
that's the point that you are driving. Okay, got
Yeah.
it, sir. Uh, s- Coming to the point, some fear storytelling looks like a fluff. How do you prove it deserves a strategic impact? Because everybody gives you stories.
Right. Yes, actually, like I was saying, stories will also become credible because we said that people trust the data and remember the story.
Yeah.
So stories become credible when the data is woven into the story.
Hmm.
So let's take some example. I will also give you a very powerful demonstration of the power of stories.
Okay.
So 30 years ago, you know, I was told by someone that India adds one Australia to its population every year.
Oh, okay.
Now, I have remembered this for 30 years because it was shocking. It was shocking to me that the population of Australia, which is much bigger than India, is 3 crores approx,
Okay.
and India adds 3 crores to its population every year. So, this is the power of data storytelling. you know we will forget the data, but if the data is woven into the story, then we will remember it for a long time to come. Same way, anything which we have to narrate, supposing uh, you know uh, uh, I am asked that how would you contribute to the supply chain of the organization, and I share a background story. Okay, we have a family business, and our business was literally about to shut down because of the supply chain crisis, and we faced a lot of supply chain crisis in the COVID times. And that made me realize the importance of supply chains, not getting too dependent on one source, and that has taught me a lifelong lesson in supply chain. Now the board will believe me, or anyone will believe me, because of the validation, which I have done through a lived experience.
Sir, I was on mute. Sorry about that. I wanted to ask you one thing. Why
Right.
do dashboards overwhelm boards and how can storytelling ease this pain?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because we use dashboards for data, and now boards have so much of data available to them. And for story also, we have storyboards. So we have to do
Yeah.
a combination of dashboards and storyboards. I remember I met the famous professor who had launched Great Lakes Institute of Management, and he was a professor at Kellogg School of Management in US. And he made a very powerful statement. This was like 2005.
Hmm.
Dr. Balavi Balachandran.
Okay.
And he made this powerful statement that today we have obesity of data and yet starvation of information.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I think the times have drastically changed, because AI is giving you not just data but information also.
Yeah.
Okay. So that statement may not be applicable anymore. Even in the past 2 years of using tools like ChatGPT or Gemini, I have found 2 years back I used to find lot of hallucination in AI. Okay, so it will tell me some Marshall Goldsmith book is written by Dr. Amit Nagpal. So that kind of serious hallucinations. But now I do not find such hallucinations. So Google also started from Google Bard, and then evolved into Google Gemini. So I've seen the AI evolve, and now AI is, I would say, my experience is almost 95% trustworthy in terms of, and maybe you can make it even more trustworthy by saying, okay, give me reliable sources, give me sources of your information. Now let's come to the, how can boards combine the dashboards data with the story, so that if the numbers are presented to the board with the context. Okay, so let's say we take the case of a company is thinking about digital transformation, and maybe the budget requires is 50 crores. Now the board is having a question mark: should we invest, not invest? Okay, now if we present this need for digital transformation through a story, okay, XYZ has company has done this digital transformation in our industry, and let's say their customer retention has increased by 5%, their employee retention has increased by 7%. Like, this is impacting everything. Like, I came across that there is one famous HR chatbot which is asking the employee on day one and day seven and after 1 month, how is your experience with the organization? So the management, HR, and even the top management has access to that data, that how is the employee feeling in the organization, and it is even flagging now the employee is so unhappy that the employee can resign. So those red flags are also being raised by these HR chatbots. So this is the power. Now the data has to be presented with the context and with the narrative, and then it becomes very powerful for the boards.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is getting the right data to have the boards take a decision. Am I right in saying that, sir?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Compliances put boards to sleep. How can SOC 2 or HIPAA be told as a trusted story, sir?
Yes, so I think any now here I would emphasize on the word reframing. So we have to reframe the data with the context, that why this is required. So that context setting has to be reframed, and then it will make more meaning for the boards.
Yes, sir. Now, coming to the next point that I want to ask is
Right,
remote boards face fatigue, right? And how can virtual story receive a digital engagement? Because now, after COVID, at least we have seen everybody working remote.
right,
In that scenario, how do you look at storytelling there?
right. So I think attention deficit disorder is something, all of us are facing in the digital age. We have, seven
Right.
windows open on our laptop. We are jumping from one window to another, and boards, of course, have even stronger challenges in terms of brevity or shortage of time. So this, there are so many techniques which can be used here. For example, short story, for example, visuals. I have found visuals and videos are, they catch more attention. So especially in, in the virtual context where people may have a kind of, slide fatigue or, meeting Zoom fatigue. So if we present visuals, and visuals in the form of a narrative. Okay, so if five photographs are in a sequence telling the evolution of something, telling the progress of the event, then it becomes, visual storytelling. So visual storytelling is a very, very powerful tool for such, virtual engagement. uh, then we can also use, depending upon the context, let's say board wants to go into depth for two areas, and rest of the seven areas it wants to have an overview. So we can have what we now call as snackable content, 30-second videos,
Mm.
we can have micro, content, so that the overview can be done through micro, and where the board wants a more in-depth, there, we go into the in-depth narrative and, combination of in-depth data and in-depth narrative.
Now, what you are saying is we give them a snippet kind of an information,
Yes, yes,
and if there is more detail required, you either give them a link or a document which can give you more data, right? In whatever way
yes.
they want to look at.
Yeah, so dashboards, what typically happens is that, it will give you a certain number,
Hmm.
and then out of, let's say, 10 figures on the dashboard, there is one figure which is a red flag for you, and then you want to dig deeper, and, then you can see the deeper data for that particular item.
Hmm.
But of course, if we can also set the context, so let's say the CEO is giving the presentation to the board, or it is a HR issue, so CHRO is giving a presentation to the board. So that red flag, can be presented in the form of a narrative, in the form of a story, to make it more meaningful. I'll tell you a very interesting story from my lived experience. And it will also very, very, because a lot of people have that doubt that, okay, what is the difference between narrative and story?
Hmm.
Now, if I tell you, I got up at 6 a.m. in the morning, I had my morning ablutions, I brushed my teeth, I, went to the park, came back, had my breakfast and left for office. Is this a story? No.
No.
This is a narrative because I'm
Right.
sharing a sequence of events which is meaningless.
Hmm.
Okay, so there is no meaning, no learning, no moral, nothing is coming out of it. Now, let me convert this narrative into a story.
Hmm.
So, one particular day, I went to the park. Now, there was this mother and daughter who were passing by. So, the mother was shouting, at the maybe 13, 14-year-old daughter, and because she was shouting, so I could easily overhear. So, she was shouting, तूने फेसबुक पे क्यों लिख दिया आई एम फीलिंग लोनली सो व्हाई डिड यू राइट ऑन फेसबुक आई एम फीलिंग लोनली एंड आई हैव read lot of articles on millennials are more lonely. So this is, now the narrative has turned into a story. Okay, so there is some meaning. Maybe When I heard that conversation, so it set me into an introspection mode. Why are the millennials more lonely? So that morning walk, became not just a, that morning was not just a narrative, it became a story.
What you told was at the start of the question, or when you started explaining, you said a sequence of events.
Yes,
Then it did not. It sounded that you had done maybe a check mark on each of the tasks that you did and moved on, right?
right,
But when you put that into a story where you talk about an incident that has happened, somebody posting it on Facebook or any other platform,
right.
and the discussion becomes a kind of a story, and you try to see what is the outcome that is coming in, why that question has come, why is the reason that question has been asked, if there is an issue that is faced, and how do we get into an introspection. Am I right in saying that, sir?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
You would have heard that famous proverb, water, water everywhere and not a drop to drink. So
Yeah,
10 years ago, I wrote a blog, data, data everywhere, and not a drop of story. And that blog was featured by LinkedIn. LinkedIn in those days used to have channels, marketing channel,
yeah.
subject-wise channels. And it caught a lot of corporate attention because there is too much of data in the corporate world. There is obesity of data and there is starvation of story, not information, but starvation of story.
Your pointer is that there is so much of information, converting that to a story is very crucial point, is what you're saying. Am I right
Yes,
in?
exactly, exactly.
So you
And
have lot of data pointers, but how do we convert that into a storyboard, which becomes a story that can be looked at various aspects of decision making?
yes, it will make the whole thing memorable. It will help in decision making. It will become more meaningful for the board. So many benefits are there. Stories integrate emotion and logic, for example.
Now, most of the time, what we have seen is there would be a big pitch which will be saying that this is the evidence, this is what we have, and but still they fail. How does the storytelling solve this kind of a situation?
Right. So, because you used the word pitch, so I was
Yeah,
reminded of my favorite salesman. Uh, Almost again 25, 30 years ago, my parents had bought the AquaGuard water purifier from a Eureka Forbes,
yeah.
that direct sales guy. Now, this gentleman came to our home, and how he pitched is a very interesting example of data plus story.
Okay.
So he tells my parents, okay, according to UNO, WHO, 85% of the diseases are waterborne. Now that is data. And it is very important data because my parents feel concerned. Okay, we have, small children and, young children and water, healthy water is so important for their health, or good water, pure water is so important for their health. So the data, like we said, people trust the data. So my parents trust that data. It is coming from a reliable source. Now, what is the aspect of storytelling he used? Here he told the parents that the water purifier is so powerful that even if you put Coca-Cola into it, it will convert it into
Water. Okay.
water. Now, that is something so memorable. I remember it after 25 years.
Yeah. No, and if you really look at the old ads also, sir, now if you look at Happy Dent or any other ads that were there, they
Right.
used to give you a message saying that you take this, your teeth will be brighter. Then the story of egg, yeah, rose cow one day, Sunday or yeah, Monday. So
Yes.
those were
Yes.
stories that were pulling out people, and Horlicks. There was a story behind Horlicks coming in.
Right.
Boost had its own story telling,
Right.
saying that this is how it was marketed, right? So your
Right.
point of Eureka Forbes is those kind of examples where you bring a story where you impress people to buy their commodities or products, right?
Yes, if you remember, almost 20 years back, there was a campaign run by Cadbury's,
Hmm.
and 20 years ago, adults in India were consuming chocolate either secretively or very rare
Yeah.
because chocolate was seen as a children product.
Hmm.
Now, this ad came, the famous singer Rageshwari model, she was there in that ad. And then there is a cricket match happening, and the team, wins, and she rushes to his boyfriend, and all that. Now, the purpose of that ad was that series of ads permanently changed the belief of people that chocolates are not just for children; they are also for adults. And now we don't feel shy in eating chocolates as
Yeah.
adults. We gift so much of chocolates on Deepavali or festivals now.
Now we've replaced sweets with chocolates. Now it is
Yes,
sweet. Traditional sweets have gone, and that narrative, what you said 20 years back of Cadbury bringing that story, is
right.
changed the way we look at chocolate itself. Right. So
Yes.
yeah, absolutely true on that, sir.
And
Uh,
since we were talking about the behavior of adults, so let
mhm.
me also bring a behavior of a child.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have this, this is long back. So my 4-year-old son, so suddenly he comes to me and he says, Papa, I want a Mentos. And I'm surprised because he has never asked me for a Mentos. And then he says, my brain is not working and मेरा दिमाग ठीक से काम नहीं कर रहा है, दिमाग की बत्ती जला दे. So Mentos had that positioning, and he was feeling that my brain is clouded and I'm not able to think clearly, so I need a Mentos, to make my brain think clearly.
Those were ads. Now, if you look at ice creams also, sir. Now, ice cream also is that color, the way they present, and how it gets melted in your mouth, kind of a story, that narrative that they give
Right.
makes you tempted to go and buy those products or look
Yes,
at those food items.
exactly.
Boards misjudge cyber risks. How can storytelling align perception with reality?
Yes, so we have, we use this framework, problem, stakes, resolution. So we call it PSR framework. So in this case, cybersecurity, this framework is very useful. So there is a certain problem. For example, the problem is phishing attacks on email, cyber attacks. We have seen so many big cyber attacks. Like I remember, All India Institute of Medical Sciences was not able to access its medical records because of the cyber attack, or somebody had hacked the medical records. So now these data breaches, data privacy, all these issues have to be presented. So whatever is our issue, it can be data privacy or it can be threat of cyber attack. So that is the problem. Now in the PSR framework, P is the problem, S is the stakes. So when, let's say, the CEO is presenting to the board, so the CEO says, okay, we are a banking company, and customers are having transactions worth 500 crore rupees in a year in our bank, and if there is a data breach, the amount of risk or the stakes are very, very high. Okay, so that is the stake part, and then the solution. Now if we implement this particular software, or like we have ethical hackers, for example, so ethical hackers will check if the system is hacking proof or not. So what are the vulnerabilities in the system. So, and if we implement, let's say, this ethical hacking program to check the vulnerabilities, the stakes which are very high because of the vulnerability, those we will be able to solve that challenge and reduce the risk or minimize the risk. Now the issue has become critical for the board, and board will take immediate actions.
Got it, sir. Now, coming to our next pointer, uh, why do innovation pitches stall, and how can storytelling unlock investments?
Right. So, in fact, I learned business storytelling from Michael Margolis in
Okay.
US, and he
Mhm.
works for clients like NASA and Facebook and Google, and that is his core area, storytelling for innovation. Okay. So, stories, let's say, let me give you a very concrete example. So, Indian companies may be trusted for low end software, but not for high end software. Okay, for technology, we do not have a very global kind of a brand, or global kind of a reputation. Now, Tata Communications, which had a New York office, was facing this challenge that being an Indian company, they were not taken with so much credibility in US. So I had delivered a talk to Tata Communications team. In fact, Tata Communications had organized a CIO meet, and Tata Communications marketing team was also there, and I spoke about Michael Margolis. And after some time, I came to know that Tata Communications in New York office had hired Michael Margolis to reframe the story that Tata Communication provides global world-class technological products, and it is in no way inferior to any Western companies. And that reframing of the Tata Communications innovations, Tata Communications excellence was done by Michael and his team.
Got it, sir. What you're saying is Tata Consultancy brought in a person who can look at how the industry is working and how the brand that India could take in for a multinational, and pitched in is what you're saying using a storytelling method, right?
Let me give you another example. I
Okay.
started my blog in 2010, December
Okay.
2010.
Hmm.
And at that time, I would eagerly watch. It was a blog on Blogger or blogspot.com, and I
Okay.
would eagerly watch as a new blogger, excitedly.
Hmm.
I am getting traffic from US and Australia and Dubai and Africa. And
Okay.
so in 6 months, I got traffic from 160 countries on my blog.
Hmm.
Why? Now, there is again the same issue, because I was writing on leadership and spirituality in those days. How meditation makes you a better leader, more alert leader, wiser leader, more conscious. India has a very strong brand for spirituality. When an
Yeah.
Indian talks about spirituality, the word takes seriously. Now we have
True.
to develop a similar brand for India, for technology and other products also. So Tata Communications was facing the challenge that India brand, was reducing its credibility rather than, improving its credibility.
Hmm. Okay. So got that point, sir. I think we are known for spirituality and spiritual studies, and especially yoga and other things, which is a core thing for India. Now,
Right.
boards need clarity in 10 minutes, right? And how do we
Right.
look at bringing a story which can give you that condense complexity in the form of a story?
Right. So dashboards will give you a lot of complex data, and
Hmm.
without the context of that data, the board may not be able to, understand the seriousness, the urgency of the task. Let's take an example. Um let's say there is a lot of data available on employee attrition, and
Hmm.
the employee attrition of the company is increasing every year. Okay. Now the board has not caught the attention of the board, because board has so many other issues also. We are assuming that now the CHRO gives a presentation, and connects the data with the story that we are losing our talent Companies like I saw Ericsson has a head of talent attraction. So
Hmm.
the top companies are having HR work as attraction of talent, and what happening in our case is that we are not attracting talent, we are losing our existing talent. So to survive in the industry, we have to, you know, create a program for talent retention, and then the CEO, merges the data with the story. Let's say the data is, the attrition rate has gone from 16% to 17% to 19% in the past 3 years. Now that is the data. Now,
Yeah.
that data also has to be clubbed with, okay, when you bring a new employee, so you have to give additional training. So the training cost becomes an additional cost for the company. Now, this is the CHRO is actually building a narrative for, why talent attraction, talent retention is should be a serious matter for the board. And whatever has to be done, whether we have to increase our salary structures, or we have to increase the perks, or the salary is not the only determining factor for employee retention. I remember one example from Google. So Google has this
Hmm.
very interesting concept of 25% passion time, which is for engineers. And
Right.
I have read and heard that some of the best products of Google, like Gmail, have been created by engineers during that passion time. So it was
Right.
not a task assigned by the boss, but it was a passion of the engineer, and they have developed, so many powerful products because of that passion. So the CHRO is able to convince with the combination of data and story the need for talent retention, and then the board, creates a strategy to implement that.
Sir, again, coming to next point is when a new leader joins or
Hmm.
new person joins the team, he lacks the trust, which I think is a common scenario when you go into a new organization.
Right.
How can that person be can tell a personal story or storytelling accelerate his credibility using storytelling?
Right. Now, that's a very good question. And in fact, trust has to be both ways.
Yeah,
The leader has to trust leader has to win the trust of the organization. And organization also needs to win the trust of the employees.
true.
Okay. So how does the leader win the trust? Leader shares personal anecdotes of performing under pressure, for example. So now we have so many platforms. We have company blogs, we have company newsletters, we also have things like company meetings, where the leader shares personal anecdotes, professional anecdotes of his personal performance, talking about issues like performing under pressure, talking about issues which are relevant to the new organization where he has joined. So he shares relevant anecdotes, and then he's able to win the trust of his new team by sharing, relevant stories. And, I'll share something interesting. So I read this quote that culture is a sum total of stories. Organization culture is a sum total of stories. For me, what is Amazon? Amazon is the sum total of stories which my ex students who have worked in Amazon have told me. My
Okay.
client who has worked in Amazon has told me. So, what is Amazon culture? For me, Amazon culture is the sum total of stories people associated with Amazon have told. So, Amazon has actually, in my mind, Amazon has very high level of credibility because of some of these stories which I have been told. So, one of my ex-students, she told me this story that every month she has an interaction with her super boss. So if you are not getting along with your boss, so you are having an interaction with the super boss, and you can share your challenges. And it's very easy to get a within the company transfer in Amazon, because of course there is politics, there are personal conflicts, there are ego issues or whatever. So now this is a practice which I've never heard in any other company. Okay, so this is a story which I remember about Amazon. Similarly, I'll share another interesting story about Tata's. Now, it is a very, very common known fact in India, and Indians are emotional like other Eastern cultures. So
Yeah.
what happens is, a senior good leader will leave the organization, and 10 people, 20 people, 50 people in his team will quit and maybe join the same organization where the leader goes.
Yeah.
So in simple words, we have a lot of personal loyalty to the leader, and we don't have so much of organization loyalty. And this is where the Tatas have succeeded. So Tatas have created that organization loyalty in their employees. And when a senior leader leaves, a new mentor is immediately given to the people so that they don't lose that connection with the organization. And similar measures are taken so that people stay loyal to the organization, not just to people. Now, that's a very interesting example of, from Tata's.
True, sir. I've heard a lot of stories in terms of Tata's hospitality industry, right? Where
Right,
Tata's, I believe, Dr. Mr. Ratan Tata loved pets, right? And he had two dogs.
right,
This story I've heard with one of our speakers who experienced this hospitality stuff in their hotels. So she went to Chikmagalur where she took her pet, and once they reached the property, there was a separate space for the pets to be given. There was a food that was placed, and they had asked whether if you are having a pet, what kind of a food that you would like to be served for your pet when
right,
you come to the property. So that's a thought away, because most of the uh, hotels which are there are not going in that direction of having a pet friendly environment. So
right,
this is again a story which has brought that brand to saying Tata's do this kind of a service even for pets. They take care. That becomes a big story, right? So that's one thing that I've learned from one of our speakers who have been telling about this. Now, global boards need to be aligned also, right?
right,
Uh, and you see different cultures are there, because now we are a global workplace. And
right.
how do we see storytelling bridging that cultural divides is what I want to understand from this.
Yes, so there was one quote which I read, that focusing on what is common between your culture and my culture brings us together. Okay, we can, if we focus on the differences, they will drive us apart, but we focus on the commonalities, then they will bring us together. So, for example, Eastern cultures are more emotional, Western cultures are more logical. So now let's take uh, so this now when it comes to the differences, now let's say there are certain this thing cultural traits in Japan, and which is different from India. So I can learn those things from Japan, but when I'm traveling to Japan, or when a Japanese is coming to India, if that person is focusing on what is common between you and us, that builds the connection. So focusing on the commonalities.
So, your point is that we should look at how we can bridge these cultures and see what way we can develop interpersonal skills to manage storytelling. Because there could be one story which can turn things for you when you speak to a Japanese customer, right? Or there could be something which an Indian customer would have given to Japanese in terms of how they looked at a problem statement, right? So, cross culture story works across cultures, right? Stories still are looking at it, does not have a barrier saying that this culture story is not there. This culture, every
Right.
culture has a story that works,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
CISOs desire real influence. How can storytelling shift from their tech operations to strategies? Because mm, looking at me as a technologist and a CIO, I will look at the technicality part, but I would always miss the story to be told, or wrapped around for telling a problem or a situation to the board. How can the CISOs get that real influence by using storytelling?
Right. So again, the story has to be used for reframing the role of CISO in the mind of the board. Okay, so let me give you an example. So CISO is seen as, let's say, a crisis preventer, data breaches or data privacy and blah, blah, blah. But if we present the role of the CISO as a person who, who was able to stop the data breaches of that 500 crore rupees transactions of customers, and because there were no data breaches, the company was able to expand in foreign markets. So CISO has actually contributed to the growth strategy of the organization. CISO has contributed because there were no data breaches, so the company's reputation is intact. If the reputation had not been intact, then the company would not have been able to expand. So the CISO has
True.
contributed to the growth of the organization. Now this reframing has to be done by the CISO, to the.
So you're trailing them to consider how to look at cyber to growth or actions where you can translate a risk into an opportunity. Maybe put those technical pointers into a story and say, if I don't have this, taking an example, saying that most of the CISOs what I have seen, or the technical guys what I have seen more technical guys, they will say this will work like this is how it is. Now what is it translating it to the board or to the managerial guys, that info is not there. Now if I put a technical guy and tell him to tell the board, he should go into pointers, is what you're saying, where he says, if you implement this framework, this is what we will cut in terms of the effort, this is the cost we will save, and this is what is the advantage that we will get while implementing. So that's the kind of story that you want to. So when a story earns the board seat, that's the story that we'll have to prepare and get it run, right?
Yes, I would say, let me give you an example, because stories, in storytelling, we use a lot of metaphor.
Okay.
Okay, now I was told this very interesting fact about Indian saints and sages.
Hmm.
Okay, now the fact is, you would have heard, a lot of times that this saint decided to leave his body, and now what they are doing, these saints are doing, they will not take water for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days, and when you don't take water for 7 days, you automatically die. Okay,
Okay.
so the CISO and that data security is like water. We always talk about food, breakfast, lunch, dinner, meals, thali, whatever. We,
Yeah.
we hardly talk about water. But water is so essential that human body cannot survive without water.
Water.
So that is the role of the CSO. Now, CSO is that water which which does not catch attention unless the crisis comes.
True, there is a lot of things, and we've spoken in many of the podcasts where we told is cyber security had become a checklist, because if this is compliant, this is where we have done, this is where we did, this is where we are compliant. Now
Right,
that role is shifting into protection of the organization in terms of breaches, in terms of brand value, in terms of how the credible this organization is putting those frameworks to save the data that is getting collected in that organization, their websites are protected. So
right,
that is the structure that is happening to the CISOs today, right? And that's a drastic shift which has happened from a regular CISO role today. And with DPDP acts coming in, data is a new oil for which everybody has to look at how the data is getting collected, processed, and this one. That's a big story which you need to build in, saying that why you are collecting, what is the purpose, how long will you keep, and what kind of this one. So that's a structure that is building in India, at least with the DPDP Act, is what I understand. Now, uh, going to this audits, imagine audits as trust stories. How can boards respond to them differently? Because when you say an audit, you are not compliant, then there's a call. If you are leaving certain compliances, then there is a problem. So how do we look at this audits as a trusted stories?
so I will explain with the example which I use for the importance, for explaining the importance of independent factors. Okay. Now, lot of SMEs, promoters, they have not understood the importance of independent directors. So I use this example. Every organization has understood the importance of internal audit before the external audit. Okay. So every organization understands that if we have done a good internal audit, then external auditor will not be able to find, mistakes or problems. Now, independent director is like that internal auditor of the organization, internal regulator of the organization. If the independent director is able to point out that flaws, that problem areas, which maybe divided companies like Enron fail because that independent directors did not play their role. So if independent director works as that internal regulator, internal auditor, then external regulatory organizations like SEBI would not be able to point out problems or lack of following of regulations. So this is a good example. Now, if we look at it from the financial audit point of view, so audit creates a trust story because actually, we can take the same Enron example. I have, if you have seen any Enron case studies and all. So Enron was doing lot of window dressing in the balance sheet.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Now this window dressing, for example, if Enron was selling an asset, it was shown as income.
Hmm.
Okay, which is not correct as per accounting procedures. Now, because of that, Enron was hiding its true profits or manipulating and exaggerating its profits, which was not pointed out by the internal or external auditors. So it did not come to the attention of the board and the company collapsed,
Okay.
completely collapsed. In India, people have heard about Dabhol Corporation, which was supposed to be set up by Enron.
Hmm.
So the company collapsed because audit did not create that trust story for Enron.
Okay. So your saying is that there was a lot of booking that happened and which lost the trust, and that's where the story was not clearly given to the board, where it would have turned differently, but it turned out to be a different story where Enron had to lose, is what you're saying.
Yes, exactly.
Sir, normally the cyber security framed as growth, right, shifts the board's priorities, right? Now, now picturing a cyber framed as growth, how would the board shift their priorities towards securing the organization's assets, sir? With a story which you can help us.
Yes, of course, we have taken the example of, let's say, banking.
Hmm.
But let's take banking and all. Of course, you can imagine if, let's say I have done 10 fixed deposits in the bank and suddenly all the data vanishes. So
Yeah.
what will happen to me? What will happen to all the, deposits which I have done? Now
Hmm.
let's take some non-banking, non-insurance, those sectors also, and that framing of that cyber security's critical role to the board.
Okay.
Okay, let's take uh, Steve Jobs has been one of the best business storytellers in the world, and anything which he would do, even a new product launch like iPod, he will tell a story for that product. Okay, so for example, when the iPod came, the story which was created by Steve Jobs and his team was 1,000 songs in your pocket.
Okay.
And in those days, we would hear, seven, eight, 10 songs on a cassette.
Asset. Yeah.
Okay, so 1,000 songs availability was a big, disruption in that sense. Now, this disruption, this role of cybersecurity, this role of digital transformation, this role has to be conveyed to the board with the relevant examples to that particular company in that particular industry. Okay. Now, all functions, whether it is supply chain or HR or all functions run on softwares, all
Hmm.
functions run on IT, and IT failure means functional failure.
Functional failure. Yeah.
Okay, so if IT fails, maybe the whole supply chain will get disrupted.
True. True.
For example, let's take the case of purchase and materials management. So you might have heard that some companies have already implemented that. So they have, let's say, X product, there is a minimum stock level of 100 units. So as soon as the stock falls below 100, the computer or the system automatically places an
Orders.
order.
Places an order. Yeah.
Okay. So if that system fails because of cyber attack or hacking, or even maybe a frustrated employee doing something wrong, so what happens? The orders are not placed. Lot of products will go get out of stock. Customer will come back unhappy, and we have heard it in marketing that a happy customer will tell one person, but an angry customer will tell 10 people. So
Yeah.
the impact of reputation on that software failure, that story has to be told to the board.
True. So coming to our next point that I want to understand. So we've been talking about storytelling for about 45 minutes now. Now, is there an example where a pitch ended with an unanimous yes? And can storytelling make that real? Is that possible?
Yes, definitely it is possible.
Okay.
Stories have that kind of influence. If the right story is told to the board, it can end in a unanimous yes. Now,
Mm.
how do we do that? You must have heard of this, famous concept, or the concept we talk, superordinate goals. Okay.
Mm.
Now, every organization has politics, every organization has individual conflicts, team conflicts. But the CEO tells the whole organization, the whole team, okay, our organization, our company is number two in the industry. We have to become number one.
Mm.
Okay. Now, then all employees, they all want to have pride in their organization. That goal is common for all the employees. That is a superordinate goal. Same way, the boards, can have a superordinate goal which can be presented through a story, and then nobody will have an objection because the goal has that transcended that individual conflicts and perspectives.
Now, coming to our last question for the day, with is in AI-driven boardrooms, will storytelling still be the ultimate influencing tool, sir?
So I will come back to the where we started. As
Okay.
long as humans run companies,
Mm-hmm.
storytelling will be the most powerful tool.
Okay. Okay.
I would say, data is like masculine energy, and story is like feminine energy, and it's the masculine plus feminine energy which gives birth to magical insights. Okay.
Great.
And
Yeah.
this data storytelling is the most powerful tool which
Mm.
humans understand. Maybe the robots would not.
Will not
So
understand.
if robots are ruling a company, if the AI chatbot is taking a decision. Yesterday I was at a board stewardship huddle, and
Mm.
there was this gentleman from Boston Consulting Group, and
Okay.
he shared something very interesting. He said that this company called Deep Knowledge had a board member who was a AI chatbot way back in 2014.
Oh, okay.
And now he says in future, every company, every board meeting will have one AI chatbot or AI as a board member in future in all
Mhm.
companies.
Okay. Okay. So AI is there, and AI's adoption is very, very high. Whether it is for automation, whether it is for chatbot, whether it is for call center, this one, agents are becoming very popular. But what you rightly said is, until we give the data to the AI chatbot or AI agents, there is nothing that they can do beyond what we give as a data. So we would like to always say that it is artificial intelligence, not human intelligence. And intelligence is different from an every artificial intelligence has to be fed with data so that it can be intelligent in a way, is what we are concluding as a statement when we look at storytelling. And we see strategies for storytelling really transforming board influences, because the kind of narratives that we are bringing onto the table are different in different scenarios. And it always matters when we give a story where it turns the organization to a growth engine, right? So that's what we look at. Any pointers that we have? Few questions which have come up, I'm bringing them here. So one person called Vivek Raj says, will be this recording uh, will we be able to get the recording? So this is streamed live to YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. It will be available on all the platforms. You can look at our platforms. That's the first pointer that for you, Vivek. Sir, coming to Pallavi, who's say, may I know how we can balance accuracy with simplicity so that the story is clear without oversimplifying the data? That's Pallavi Prakash Sharma's questions.
Right. So accuracy and simplicity have to be woven into that data story.
Hmm.
Like I say that when we talk about data storytelling, the ideal level is when the data is able to tell the complete story. So I was, I was looking at these Google graphs, in the for the cricket match.
Okay.
Okay. And every data was available in that graph. I would just move my finger and, I would find, okay, Indian team had made, let's say, 50 runs by seventh over, then Australian team had made so many runs by this over, who had, which wicket was lost, who had taken the wicket, all the data was available in that.
Okay.
Now, there the data is telling you the complete story, which is very rare. Okay. So when the data is telling the incomplete story, then the human being has to add that narrative so that the data become complete with the story. So the total complete story is available to the audience.
So, okay, she is asking another question where can you please share an example in how does influence employee decision making or consumer behavior?
Yes. So I remember I had met the famous advertising guru Prahlad Kakkad almost 8, 9 years ago at a speaking event.
Hmm.
And I had also reached early, and Prahlad had also reached early. So we were talking about, a lot of things. And he shared this example. He said, I was doing this campaign for Cadbury's, and we had done market research. And the market research pointed out that the majority of the respondents felt more comfortable with the word chocolate, which is the Indian way of saying it, vernacular way of saying it, rather than the English way of saying chocolate.
Hmm.
Now, because the majority of the respondents, which is the data, let's assume it was 93% of the respondents who said chocolate is preferable. And now when Cadbury's actually came with the advertisement, they incorporated that insight. So that data was woven into the campaign, and then they used the word chocolate.
Okay. Palvi, hope this addresses your point. And so, last question again from Pallavi is, stories are GPS to connect hearts and enlighten the paths unexplored, is what she's. This is not a question. I think she's giving a pointer for us to look at
Yes.
it. Thank you for that, Pallavi. Thank you for joining and asking these questions. Sir, with this, we are on top of the hour. We've about 3 minutes overboard in the session today. It was very insightful because we were talking about stories and stuff. So, just a small summary is what I'll drive in what we discussed so far. We spoke about why storytelling matters to the board. That's the first thing. And we spoke about AI complexity rising, leaders losing influence. Is storytelling going to help them in decision making? That's the second point that we spoke about. Then we spoke about storytelling is a fear which people most of the time look at, and they cannot take decisions while not taking a story. So that simplification is what we spoke about storytelling. And then we spoke about why dashboards overwhelm boards and how can storytelling ease this pain. We spoke on those pointers. And we spoke about how compliance can be putting boards to sleep, and how you can have stories to build across compliances like SOC 2 or HIPAA implementation, and what could be the repercussions if those are not implemented in terms of giving them overview in a story is what we spoke about. Then we spoke about cultural differences and how storytelling can be helpful in cultural differences. These are the few pointers that I had taken over the last 1 hour 5 minutes that we have gone today. We've overburdened by 5 minutes. Sorry for that. And this is what we've been discussing for the last 1 hour. Any final pointers that you would like to add before we conclude, sir?
Yeah, just one liner.
Yeah.
So there is a famous quote: "A rose is a rose is a rose is a rose."
Okay.
So nothing can match the beauty of the rose. So I have, given it a story twist. A story is a story is a story is a story. So nothing can match the power of the story.
True, sir. And we've seen our childhood's we've seen only stories in form of books. Then, in terms of small scripts, short stories. Then we saw the advent of television, and we got more of stories. And today, movies and other things is again a storytelling itself is what we can look at, and that is very impactful for us to look at how they shape the society. So that's what I would say when you talk about storytelling. And storytelling is a big influential pointer that can change the way you talk. With this, I would like to tell the audience that we have streamed this podcast live on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Hope you found this discussion valuable. And our next podcast is going to happen on the 7th of October. And we are talking how strategy turns first automation into a measurable ROI on 7th of October at 6:30 p.m. Looking forward to see you. Good day and bye for now. So thank you for joining us, and good day, sir.
Welcome.